just a very unique core of young guys and a really good coach that complains about my screens all the time. So now we're on the same side, so I'm excited.
Welcome back to another edition of Enough Said. My name is Dan Barreiro. Justin Gaard's usually with me, but it's Pierre Noujaim helping us out this week. Hi, Pierre.
Hi, guys.
Good to have you.
Good to be here.
And no Lori Fisher again. Natalie Brenninger helping us out for the second consecutive week. Hi, Natalie.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Pierre. Thanks for having me.
Good to be here.
Yeah, well, this week we're starting with the Timberwolves. The Rudy Gobert era is officially underway in Minnesota now. The Timberwolves introducing the newest member of the team this week, and Dan, the Wolves really kind of went all in to make this trade a reality.
There's no question. You know, we talk a lot on this show about the brassiness of one Bill Guerin, the general manager of the Minnesota Wild. He's kind of viewed as a guy who's willing to take risks, doesn't give a damn what conventional wisdom says. Bought out Parisian Suter, the two, cornerstone players, as an example, and said, I got to do what I got to do. This is a big, bold, I got to do what I got to do move from a guy who just got here. I love it. I absolutely love it. I know nationally it's not appreciated, and I'm very curious to see what Pierre has to say about it. But I love the bigness of it. It's risky, but sometimes to get something done big, you got to be risky. And what I love the most, Pierre, about this, for me at least, is I know there's a bunch of picks. They gave up a lot of draft capital, but they did it without having to give up a single core player, which is why I think it was worth doing. I think it is worth the risks, and I think this is a team that has a chance to be very, very good for a while. And how often have we been able to say that about the Minnesota Timberwolves?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And I remember at this point last week, I was in the Twins dugout when I saw the news break, and I looked around at everybody and I said, wait, they did what? My initial reaction, to be perfectly honest, when I saw the package going back to Utah, I said, this is insanity. I thought it was pure insanity. But now that I've walked myself off the ledge a little bit, there's no question they got the best player in the trade. There's no question that they addressed two needs that were plaguing them all of last year in rebounding and rim protection. You got perhaps one of the best rim protectors, if not the best rim protector in all the game, and that's exactly what Minnesota needed. And when you think about it, you could have Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns. We don't know who's going to start at small forward yet. It could be Kyle Anderson. It could be Jaden McDaniels. And if one of those guys starts alongside Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns, you stick your arms out like this, Dan, and it goes from one end to the other at the target center. How are you going to get a ball in the low post there against the Timberwolves next year? I don't know. I do love the player. I'm curious to see how the fit is going to go. Yep. My skepticism here is, does this make the Timberwolves a title contender? It no doubt makes them better than what they were last year. There's no doubt about that, in my opinion. But there's a feeling in my gut that says, no, it doesn't make you a title contender. And if it doesn't make you a title contender, what are you making the move for in the first place? Now, I know you want to get better. You can't run it back. But I'm skeptical that this puts them ahead of Golden State, Phoenix, Denver when they're healthy, the Clippers when they're healthy. I'm a little skeptical of it from that standpoint.
I think the answer to that question is actually going to depend more on the continued growth of Towns, but more importantly, Anthony Edwards.
No doubt.
I think that's going to be, if he can take the next step, yes, I think they have a chance to do it. I think the key to this, though, is I've felt for years, if you want to truly liberate Karl Anthony Towns and stop pretending that he can be a great defensive player, because he's never going to be that, and allow him to concentrate on the skill that he has on the other end of the court, you put a big man next to him. And he's so versatile. And obviously, Towns can be moved around all over the court. And I don't care that the league is going small. The truth is the Golden State Warriors went small.
Right, sure.
And what you do is, there's teams like the Bucks who have stayed relatively big. The Celtics, two big men. You can do it. And I like this GM, this president of basketball operations, saying, we don't care what the rules are elsewhere. We think this mix is a way that gets the best out of the players we have. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, well, you guys were kind of just touching on this, but looking forward for the Timberwolves, how do they fill the rest of the roster now, and what's this team going to look like in the future?
Well, I mean, right now there's not a lot of money to play with, that's for sure. They've got a mid-level exception, I'm sure, that they can use. And when you look around the roster, you got, 3 spots they have to fill now? I think they're only at 12 at this point, if I'm not mistaken. And you mentioned, Dan, you didn't trade away any core players, and I agree with that. That's true. A guy like Malik Beasley, Sometimes he's on, sometimes he's off. One thing we do know, he can shoot the three. I'm looking around at this team right now, and I'm saying, well, who's going to stretch the floor right now? And Anthony Edwards, you mentioned, if he continues to progress, he improved his three-point shot last year up to 35%. If he can get that to 38 or 39, I think you're going to be thrilled with that. Is Jalen Noel? Do you look at him as a guy who steps in and filled the void of Malik Beasley? Do you look at a Wendell Moore Jr. rookie step in to possibly fill the role? Those are my questions right now, is where's the three-point shooting going to be coming from? Because I know you're not going to send Karl Anthony Towns to just make him stand in the corner, even though I know he's a great three-point shooter, but that's not exactly what you're going to do with Rudy Gobert on the floor.
No, I'm actually going to be less annoyed if Cat takes 2 or 3 more threes a game, frankly, with this new configuration. Because, by the way, Rudy Gobert averaged 16 points a game last year. He's not obviously a guy who's got a lot of moves, but he can score a little bit. High percentage, obviously, a lot of those are dunks. But the fact is, he's 16 points a game, so you can get something there. But to your point, I think it is fair to say the Wolves are expecting a big jump from 2 guys, Jalen Noel and obviously McDaniels. And if they don't get it, regardless of the three-point part, just in terms of becoming better players, they're going to have a problem because they obviously don't have a lot more money to play with. I think the Anderson move is a sneaky good move. They picked up another shooter whose name now escapes me at almost a minimum that might actually help in the shooting area you're talking about. I think also on Beasley, I think deep down there was a little bit of concern. You know, he's had some difficulties in his background, in his past, that's reared its head. I think there was a concern that maybe that could happen again, at least enough to where they didn't feel like they absolutely had to keep him. And I think that's part of the reason it made it easier for them to go forward with the deal that they ultimately made.
My question now is what happens to Deangelo Russell? Because at the end of next season, Anthony Edwards is eligible for that rookie extension.
30 seconds.
And then 2 years from now, Karl Anthony Towns' extension kicks in. Unless you can convince Deangelo Russell to sign a longer-term extension to lesser money than I'm sure he's probably thinking what he's owed, I don't really see a pathway that Deangelo Russell remains in Minnesota for the long haul. And if that's the case, with a big expiring contract, and you make it $30 million, that's a very tradable contract suddenly. But I don't know if Minnesota's going to make that.
The other big question that you're absolutely right, has to be addressed and has to be answered. I can live with D'Lo a little longer with this new configuration, but it's the elephant in the room because you're right. I'm not sure he's going to be willing to make the kind of contract concessions that they're going to basically require to keep him.
Well, moving to baseball, the Twins are still in first place and their road trip continues. The team is in Texas. After playing in Chicago earlier this week, they ended up coming out on top over the White Sox, winning 2 of the 3 games, even completing a rare triple play, which was fun to see.
It was fun to see. 8-5 the first time in Major League history.
Ever.
It never happened before. Every time you go to the ballpark, you never know if you're going to see something new. That's the beauty of the game, which has existed for, over 100 years. So, yeah, I mean, it was a tough last week. At this point, we were sitting here after the Cleveland series, Dan. We're like, oh gosh, you lost 3 of 5 to Cleveland. And
bullpen meltdowns.
Yeah, bullpen meltdowns. 2 back-to-back walk-offs, and then what happened? They followed up with 2 back-to-back walk-offs against Baltimore. You take 2 or 3 against Baltimore. You take 2 or 3 against Chicago. Probably should have won that final game of the series against the White Sox. But you're sitting in first place, 4.5 games up as of right now. I don't see a lot of reasons to complain. I know there's bullpen concerns, but right now I'm fine with where this team is at.
They are the best. They're seemingly putting themselves in a position to be believed as the best team in still a fairly mediocre division. Cleveland has kind of come back to the pack. Now, do they have another run in them? I don't know. Look, it does look better because the White Sox started that series thinking we're about to take off. We've been meandering. We've had injury issues. This is our chance to deliver a statement. And frankly, they did. And the statement was they ain't ready for it. That 8-5 triple play is beyond absurd that the base runners basically ignored the fact that it's Buxton in center and that the play's in front of them. And they still acted like he didn't catch the ball. It was bizarre, and it turned around that game. I still want help from the bullpen. I hope that this little mini surge doesn't discourage the front office from saying, if we're going to do justice to the rest of this team, that's where we're going to get better, and we are indeed going to improve. I want to mention, though, a guy I know you like a lot too is Luis Ariz, because honestly, he's reached a point now where he has, to me, become a must-see TV component.
Without
just to see him at the plate. And what I love about him is it's not necessarily about him with launch angles, just concentrating only on hitting home runs. He's done that some. He's had some big ones. But he's an old-fashioned sort of hitter who basically makes the pitcher pay every time they throw a mistake pitch to him all over the field. I love it. I love his approach, and I hope he starts a revolution so it's not just about home runs and strikeouts.
Just get on base. Just keep it simple. Get on base. That's what he does best. Luis Arias. Send him to the All-Star game.
And we're bringing back the same team outside of Kevin. So, and we, so we can get better than we were last year. I mean, we didn't win last year. So, but I mean, we had a hell of a year. Why not?
Well, that's Wild GM Bill Guerin before the NHL draft started, saying they don't need Kevin Fiala to win. And they added a couple wingers in the first round of the draft. They also signed goalie Marc-Andre Fleury to a 2-year deal, which I know a lot of people were wondering about. Now, this is all happening as questions surround the status of Kirill Kaprizov. There are reports that Russian authorities are after him for avoiding military obligations. Of course, we don't know if that's true or not. The Wild only saying he is in Russia with family and friends. Dan?
Well, there's a lot to get to here, and we'll try to cover all of it. And let's save Kaprizov for a moment to get to play off of what Billy Guerin said in that particular clip. I think if you're looking at it logically, you're not going to replace 85 points from Fiala overnight in one season. I don't think that's very logical. We can argue about whether they should have tried harder to keep him, but the fact is he's gone. So if you're not going to be able to get that same level of offense, how else might you compensate? Well, improve your defense, and part of defense is goaltending. And I think part of the reason, we know there's been a long-standing relationship between Marc-Andre Fleury and the GM, but beyond that, I think part of the reason he was really aggressive about bringing him back is the idea of, okay, we've got 2 legitimate goaltenders. Maybe that helps us become, in part, better defensively, and we don't miss that offense quite as much. I like bringing him back. Now there's some question whether Cam Talbot's has his nose out of joint the way it was at the end of the playoff run. His agent making noise that they're going to have a conversation with Guerin. Guerin is trying to reassure Talbot and his people that, hey, we want you to be part of this as well. So that might be a challenge to be working out. But I think, Pierre, that's part of why it became such a big deal to want to have 2 fairly accomplished goaltenders to help you compensate for the fact that you probably aren't going to score as easily as you did a year ago.
Yeah, and in my opinion, you need to. I mean, you need two goaltenders to go throughout a long, very rigorous schedule in the National Hockey League. And when I look at it, you mentioned it, Dan, 85 points in 82 games, that's a lot to replace, especially 33 goals. Where is that going to come from? Now, do you look at guys like Boldy and Rossi maybe perhaps to take the next step and try to fill the void there up front for Minnesota? You hope so, that's for sure. But I'm not as cavalier about it as Bill Guerin with Kevin Fiala being on the way out. I understand why you had to make the move. But again, 33 goals is a lot to replace.
Yep.
So I'm a little concerned. I don't think they're necessarily all that much worse with Kevin Fiala walking out the door. I still think this is a playoff team and a team that could make a run. You never know what will happen as we approach the trade deadline when next year rolls around. We still have free agency coming up here in the National Hockey League. So I'm waiting and seeing, but I am not as, like I said, cavalier about it the way Bill Guerin is.
Can't be, and I'm still in the group that would prefer, if you're making a decision between keeping Dumba or Fiala, I'd have moved on Dumba. That's a sore subject for the general manager, but it will be worth watching. But of course, the elephant in the room is the Kaprizov situation.
Right.
He's obviously the franchise. He's the straw that stirs the drink with this team. And if you've got somebody, the allegation is he bought a falsified military ID. That ain't good anywhere.
Nope.
That's especially ain't good, I don't think, in Russia, with all the volatility there and with a guy named Putin in charge. And so everybody's trying to get a handle on exactly what the situation is. Guerin is saying that Kaprizov's not in this country, which is concerning if he's in Russia. Is he going to be allowed to come back? There's also the complication that apparently the exemption he had, if that's legitimate, ended July 30th, which in theory then meant they still might say, well, it's time for you to do your military service. Will they do that with him? There's got to be a lot of nervous people in the Wild organization about how this thing gets resolved. Maybe it gets resolved easily, but given it's Putin, all bets are off.
Hard to know what to believe. Hard to know what to believe with the news coming out of Russia and the news reporting on this story. It's hard to know who's saying what and at the right time because, like you said, Dan, if he is in Russia, it could be trouble for him coming back to the United States.
Enough said. Well, WNBA star Brittany Griner is facing a possible sentence of 10 years in a Russian prison after pleading guilty to drug charges. Griner told the court while she did carry vape cartridges with cannabis oil through a Russian airport, her actions were unintentional as she was quickly packing to leave. Dan?
Well, here again, it's back to back. We've got stories with international political ramifications, and Russia is in the middle of it in both cases. Here's what's confusing about this story. I've read some legal experts say that the fact that she pleaded the way she did actually makes it harder for a so-called prisoner swap to take place. It complicates it. I've heard other people say, no, this is exactly the step that needed to be taken because she was not going to be found not guilty. So you fall on the sword, so to speak, hoping that this starts the clock on some sort of negotiation to try to get her back. The dilemma, though, here, what makes it even more complicated is the name of the person, I can't even pronounce the name of the person, who allegedly the Russians might want back in return. His nickname is the Merchant of Death.
Yes.
Now, that tells me that if you're actually trying to do some kind of a swap here, is that going to be considered, in this sense, a fair exchange? So is this just the beginning of it? Was this part of a strategy where the folks representing Griner are convinced that this will get her closer to coming back here? I don't think anybody yet knows, just like with the Kaprizov story, because we're talking about Russia.
Yeah, absolutely. We are talking about Russia, one of the most corrupt countries, on the planet, and it's not going to be easy to get Brittany Griner back. You would have thought she would have been back already at this point, but now it's starting to get more and more concerning. When you use the term wrongfully detained with her, yeah, she's wrongfully detained, but yesterday when I was reading this story, Dan, I got to tell you, the one thing that came up to me was, her saying, I didn't mean to break any laws. I'm not saying that she deserves the punishment that she's getting right now, but how often were you and I told that ignorance is not an excuse growing up? You kind of have to be aware of your situation and your surroundings. The one thing that has surprised me about this is Russia's willingness to go far and beyond to keep this a story and to keep strong-arming this situation, because when you have players like this going over to Russia to play, this is very beneficial to Russia. Why would you alienate star players to not come back to your country? I don't get that strategy at all.
By the way, when I say Merchant of Death, he was a huge arms dealer. That was the nickname that has been used, and we were after him for a long time.
Well, the Lynx are still in last place, but seem to be bouncing back after a rough start to the season. The Lynx have won 5 of their last 7 games. So do you think they're turning things around?
They're definitely improving. There's not any question about that. I think they're still in 11th place, though, at this point. Now, that means the way the teams are bunched together, I believe they're only like 2 or 2.5 games out of the last playoff spot. So I don't know where this is going. I mean, call me a romantic. You can accuse me of continuing to live in the past, but to me, the struggles for this team relative to where they were remind us of one thing, man. I think Cheryl Reeve's a hell of a coach, but you got to have talent. Talent matters, and they had so much of it. And I don't know, to a certain degree, that this team has ever recovered, Pierre, from Maya Moore shocking the world by retiring in her prime. And they're still scrambling, and until they get that so-called superstar player, they're going to be doing a lot of scrambling.
And they had a couple of players from last year's team. Laisha Clarendon is one that comes to mind, and suddenly she's not a part of this team. And at the beginning of the year, there were so many faces and names coming in and out of the lineup, and it's hard to have continuity and chemistry when you have so many players coming in and out of the lineup. I really think that played a huge role at the beginning of the season for this team not finding its footing. Now, granted, obviously, when you don't have Nafisa Collier, that's going to make things a lot more difficult. I mean, she's the team's best player. There's no question about it. So turning things around, yes, it appears that they are. Is it enough by season's end? That's yet to be determined. I'm not as optimistic about it. If they do sneak into the postseason, great, but you don't really expect them to do anything serious, even if they sneak into the playoffs, do you?
No.
Can't really, no.
No, in fairness, no. And it just gives me further.
Well, time for lightning round. We're starting with some sad news out of Hollywood. James Caan has passed away. He's known for Brian's Song Misery and, of course, The Godfather.
I love his life story. His father was a butcher. So as for the big job was going to be, I'm going to be working at 4:45 in the morning on the docks, like moving moving meat around for the rest of my life. And he said he did it for about 15 minutes and said, ain't going to work, man. I got to figure something else out. And as they say in the Hollywood business, the rest is history.
I have to admit, I've never seen Misery. I've never seen Brian's Song. I've never seen The Godfather.
Whoa.
Any of them. But I did watch religiously the hit TV show Las Vegas with James Caan back in the day. Never missed an episode. He was fantastic.
Well, if you're planning to visit Venice, Italy, be prepared to pay a little extra. Starting next year, the city will require reservations and an entry fee. So it'll cost about $10 a day, and if you don't follow the rules, you could be fined $315. What? So it's to prevent overcrowding, but I don't know.
Oh, overcrowding? What's the problem here? Oh, I mean, we have thousands and thousands of people flocking to our city and spending money at shops and hotels and restaurants. No, we got to. This is going to. Hey, you know what? I'll go to Positano then. No problem there. And they're not going to charge me there. It's beautiful out there.
Has anybody else tried this before? I assume this is something new. How in the hell is this going to work?
I've never heard of this before.
Makes
I think
no
it's
sense
a terrible idea.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's a bad precedent, and I hope it doesn't spread.
No.
Well, enough said on that note. According to Forbes, Rihanna is this year's youngest female self-made billionaire. She's 34 years old with a net worth of $1.4 billion. So according to Forbes, most of the money comes from her work in the world of music and cosmetics. And in 2019, Kylie Jenner held this title. Her net worth is now just a measly $600 million.
So let me ask you guys, both of you, something. Does being a billionaire mean what it once did? I mean, with inflation, is it as big a deal? It's still a pretty big deal to be a billionaire.
I'd say it's a big deal.
Yeah. Okay. I guess they can afford gas in today's economy. You know, that's a good thing. Well, Dan, real quick, your favorite Rihanna song? Go.
I don't have one.
Oh,
sorry.
Rude Boy's a great one, right, Nat?
There it is. I'll go with it.
It's definitely a good one. She's got so many hits, but she hasn't had music in a long time.
Yeah. She's true. She's talented. There's no question.
Very
about
talented.
That.
Yeah, this music this money all from cosmetics, which is pretty impressive.
I haven't dabbled in that, I have to admit. We do have to wear makeup for this show, but maybe, when I'm running out, I'll turn over to Rihanna for that.
I bought her products and they're good, so I recommend.
I'll take your word for it.
Well, I wonder what the breakdown is between the music side in terms of her wealth and the cosmetic side. My guess is the cosmetic side's a much bigger part of it.
I would have to imagine.
Yeah.
With record labels taking your money left and right.
All right, well, the American Kennel Club introduces its newest breed, the Bracco Italiano. So this means the dogs can now compete for best in show at many U.S. dog shows. The Bracco dates back 2,000 years, and I have to say, they are just adorable. I am a fan, but I also love to watch the Westminster Dog Show.
I'm with you on that. It's a handsome-looking pooch. I'd never seen. Now, let me guess.
That is the dog?
Pierre, you're a cat guy, aren't you?
No, I am a huge animal lover.
Okay.
I love them all, but I love dogs. I love dogs.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever had seen that breed before.
That was the breed.
That is the dog. It's in the sporting group. So it's used for like hunting and stuff.
Bracco Italiano. I mean, he looked like he had a little bit of hound to him.
Well, why did it take this long? What did this breed do to be sort of,
So they need to be popular in America before they can.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Oh, well. Yep. Bracco Italiano?
That's it.
I mean,
it's an exotic name for sure.
I feel like he needs like a, fight song to come out of the Westminster Dog Show.